presenters and what you actually came for. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Concrete Society. Maybe you don't know us. A lot of you I know of in the list. I see the people I know, so you know about the Concrete Society. But firstly, a warm welcome to everybody. We thrive on our core values and we try and incorporate this in everything we do. It's modern and advanced, relevant, streamlined and efficient, objective, inclusive and loyal. So that's our values. We've got some committees. We've got another few committees being planned soon, but our current committee is the Inland Branch Committee. We've got a KwaZulu-Natal Branch Committee. We've got a Western Cape Branch Committee. We've got a Ready Mix Concrete Committee, FIB Committee, which is structural concrete, and the Cement Branch Committee. We're looking at a Durability Committee, a Sustainability Committee, and a few others coming soon. And then we'll advertise it to all our members. Who wants to join is welcome to join these committees. Also, to join the Concrete Society is not so expensive. Firstly, today's presentation is open for the public. Anybody can come and listen, but if you want CPD points or need CPD points, you'll have to be a member. And if you still want your CPD points for today urgently and you're not a member, just speak to Natasha. She can maybe organize something tomorrow for you. But we've got a special at the moment on our memberships because there's just a little bit less than 6 months left till the end of our financial year, which ends end of February. So we've got half price memberships available for the rest of the year. You can see you can become an individual member. Your company can become member with certain advantages, academic memberships and associate memberships. One of the advantages of being a company member is your logo is shown here every time, and the diamond members, our upper tier members, are Chryso, Saint-Gobain and Quick Group. Then we've got some Emerald members. I'm not going to read them. Then we've got Tanzanite members. They are shown. And another list of Tanzanite members are getting more and more every time we hold this webinar. And then we've got Emerging Enterprises members. And then associate members, other similar organizations. And academic members. I think a lot of universities are involved. You can see them here as well. And then we've got a concrete fix and a concrete class. Now today's webinar is a concrete fix. This is a fix of the latest technology, the latest design approach, or whatever you want to call it. But it's about the latest technology and getting a fix of the latest what's going on in the industry locally and abroad. We've got today's presentation I'll talk about in a short while, but we've got for November, we've got Jaco Kokart from Afrimat. That will be a concrete material topic. We try to incorporate both concrete materials and structural concrete as well. So we'll have presentations on both fields. And of course, the fields that interlink between the two is really interesting fields. Then we've got Wandi Olivier from AECOM in February next year when we're going to start again. And then in March next year, the FIB will do a presentation on the FIB, the Federal, it's a French name, but it stands for International Federation of Structural Concrete. And then we've got the concrete classes, which is more about the basics of concrete technology, structural concrete. We alternate between structural materials and structural concrete every month. Next month, November, the 6th of November, it's a structural concrete topic again, reinforced concrete design recap, design for flexure with and without actual force. So as you can see, if you're a structural engineer, you probably know this, but if you're a junior structural engineer, maybe it's useful, or if you just want to recap, if you want to know more about structural design, flexural design, it'll be a very useful presentation. And then we're still planning for February and March. Branch activities you will hear about as a member through emails. And CPD points will be emailed to you afterwards. We're up to date now, more or less, with our CPD points after there was a lag a few months ago. But you'll get a number that you need, and that number will be given on the email will give you the instructions of all your CPD points you needed afterwards. And also look at us on our website and also on LinkedIn. Join us on LinkedIn to know about all these webinars, when they're coming, what's next, what is our next conference we're organizing, or what are we doing. You're welcome just to follow us there. Then lastly, I want to end off by saying the success of the society relies on the members and the members of non-members and members and non-members, but especially our members. I want to thank you very much for your support. The more the membership grows, the more we can grow, the more we can offer for members, and the more we can improve the industry in that process. So that's that about the Concrete Society. Now about today's presentation, what it all revolves around. It's about precast, post-tensioned reservoirs, smarter, faster, stronger. Our two presenters is Willie Steenkamp, who has just been co-opted as the technical director of the Concrete Society, and Kobus Kotze. They are both directors of Infinite Consulting Engineers, a specialist structural and civil engineering firm based in Polokwane, Limpopo. Together, they lead a multidisciplinary team recognized for delivering innovative and technically robust solutions in concrete, steel, and precast infrastructure projects across South Africa. Both are registered at EXA. Willie and Kobus both bring complementary expertise to the firm. Willie with a strong focus on structural design, quality control, hybrid concrete systems, and water-retaining structures, and Kobus with a deep experience in precast and pre-stressed concrete technologies. Their combined leadership has positioned the Infinite Consulting engineers at the forefront of the precast post-tension reservoir section, with the firm contributing to more than 600 megaliters, not milliliters, megaliters of water storage infrastructure, and 2 times 2025 Fulton Award winning projects. Well done. Including Africa's first precast concrete water tower. They're passionate about collaboration and continuous improvement. Willie and Kobus remain committed to advancing practical, safe, and cost-effective engineering solutions that strengthen the South African built environment. That was a mouthful, but it is a mouthful because it is a mouthful. Welcome, Willie and Kobus. You are welcome to, I'm going to stop sharing. You're welcome to share your presentation and come alive. Yes, there, yes. I see that. And can I hear you guys? Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Billy, for the introduction, and welcome all, and thank you for putting a bit of time apart and allowing us to present this presentation on precast reservoirs. I think in starting off, maybe just to discuss precast reservoirs versus in situ reservoirs, there is a couple of advantages that I would run through, and then we'll come back to the slides and we'll quickly go through an overview of the precast reservoir system. Starting off in construction time and program advantages. Precast is significantly shorter in construction time. Obviously, with the factory manufacturing, you have an advantage where the units are already being manufactured while the site works and earthworks is being constructed. You have reduced curing delays. It is in a factory condition, no delays there. You have earlier water tightness testing, reduced weather dependency. Obviously, in a factory, we don't have the normal issues you would have on site due to rain, temperature extremes, or wind. And I think one of the more important ones is the overlapping trades. Apart from the factory manufacturing of the precast elements, while the site works is already in place, the earthworks and the platforms, you also have another overlapping trade during installation, where your in situ cast elements, and we'll run through it in the slides, can actually be constructed while the precast installation is underway. The second advantage is obviously the quality and the dimension control and finish that you get with precast reservoirs. As you can see on this picture, the concrete finish it's of a high standard. Your concrete mix designs and curing is controlled in a factory environment. You have high quality surface finishes, strict dimension tolerances, obviously with everything being cast in shutters, and then obviously reduced concrete defects if you think about honeycombing, and as well laboratory tested concrete strengths with traceable batch certificates. I think it's a U+ point for precast reservoirs. Going into site impact, obviously you have advantages in reduced on-site labor, shorter site duration improves safety naturally, minimal scaffolding with the precast elements. You can see on this photo we have attached here the wall panels ranging from 8.5 to over 10 meters long. Less noise, dust, concrete batching requirements, and I think also cost. Precast has a higher upfront cost component due to the factory production, lifting hardware and transport, but you have on the other side lower site preliminaries and time-related costs. And in the long run, long-term maintenance costs is substantially lower due to improved quality and reduced leakages. That in a nutshell, basically, the advantages of precast. Then just coming to the reservoirs that we offer, we have a range of 2 to 50 megaliter reservoirs. We're busy upgrading the system to 100 megaliter reservoirs. So, precast can actually cater for a lot of capacity sizes, taking the South African water state into consideration. And if you look at precast installation, from the 2 to the 30 megaliter, your precast installation ranges between 2 to 6 months, which is quite a substantial faster system and installation time. So that being said, let's come to the slides. On this slide, basically, just to run through it, this is a total system overview. On this, the conventional in situ construction will be your floor and your bases, as well as your ring footing, which supports the precast wall panels. Your precast elements will be then your columns, beams, and suspended slabs with your perimeter walls. We have noted here the walls, especially, they are precasted vertically pre-tensioned and then horizontally post-tensioned on site. Here's a couple of nice pictures just to give you an idea. You can see here at the bottom in situ cast floors, and then these are the precast columns with the corbels supporting the pre-tensioned I-beam sections, precast I-beam sections, and the hollow core slabs. Going to the connection details, precast columns to the foundation. So design is fixed, but with that, there's also various configurations possible. These are just a couple of examples that we have here, but it's more project specific depending on a couple of conditions on site. It can be an independent base and floor, where you would have a joint around your base or pad footings. It can be a monolithic cast up or down stand where the base is incorporated into the floor, an independent base on top of the floor, columns penetrating through the floor onto your pad footings at the lower level, or the last one then on a pile cap. This is basically just a picture of one of the sites. Here typically you can see the floor slab panels with pad footing. Pad footings were always installed here first with the precast columns, and the roof structure could commence then whilst the installation was being done on the floor slabs. Coming to the precast beam to precast column connection, partially fixed design. Here you can typically see a precast column with a reinforcement detailed and in the corbels. Here we have the joining precast beam connection sitting on top of these corbels, and you have your slab connection at the top. You will note out of these beams you have the steel protruding. This will be cast and stitched together. The slabs, basically the cores are opened, and then in situ concrete is cast, filling the cores that we open with the links to form a monolithic cast. On this picture, just some installation photos, typically of a wall panel installation on the side. You can see being the crane lifting the wall panels into position. As I was saying, now we have a composite beam installation at the top where you have the protruding strips, reinforcement on top of the precast beam. The surface of that beam is intentionally roughened, and you have the tie steel, the stitching into the hollow core slabs. You can see on this picture that's the 3 bars. Typically, 3 cores were opened off the hollow core slab. It goes about 1.2 to 1.5 meters into the slabs, closed off with some plastic dungs just for the concrete not to run into the hollow core slabs. And then everything is stitched together so you have a complete monolithic unit at the top. Here's a nice picture of what I was describing now. Here you can see the precast beam basically at the bottom with the protruding strips. And here's the cores open in the hollow core slabs. This now typically will have that tie steel now running through these cores. And we also have some longitudinal steel along these beams, just tying everything together. Here's basically a view from the top to give you a better idea of how the complete system would look. You can see the lines there where obviously the beams are running. You have your center core portion here in the middle, which gets installed typically first, and the perimeter slabs at the later stage. And you can also see actually some of the coping details being stacked on the roof, which then finishes off the edge. It's one of the finished details we do have. We also have another coping system or another finish. Depends on, as I said, project specific, what finish would go there. Here's now where the stitching concrete is being cast and the slabs are being stitched together with those strips from the beams, the protruding strips. And you can see also along the edge, everything is now being tied together with a coping detail. Okay, coming to the precast wall panel connection to the ring footing. You have the protruding strips also sticking out from the ring footing that's being cast. First, it's a 2-pore stage system. Lateral reactions are transferred through the kicker, and then the wall, after the whole system is designed as a slide and a pin design, where it's sliding first stage and then pinned as a final stage when the kickers are cast. Here's just a photo of the kicker being cast at the later stage. Now this is after the floor slabs has been cast. You can see here they're also starting now to put up the perimeter slabs as the kicker is being installed. On the right hand side, obviously the kicker on the outside is also cast. Both kickers internally and externally are cast at the same time. Coming to the precast wall panel joint, you can see at the top right hand side a nice picture of the joint after it's been filled. And here at the bottom, it's a plan view, top view, basically of the joint. So the wall panels are connected with this typical grout joint. It's a high viscosity infill grout that gets cast into the panels. All of the panels, and I'll see if there's a photo, a nice picture maybe later on, have between the tubes for the post-tension cables have actually flow grout tubes for the grouting process that gets done at the later stage. The grout is poured prior to the post-tensioning, and it is contained in between the wall panels or along the wall panels with that temporary gasket held in position through the bolts, and that to simulate a watertight seal. I think in the next slide, we actually have the key locks. So this is basically the system being used to tie these rubber gasket systems on the inside and outside before the grouting takes place. And that key lock basically fits into a groove cast into the precast panel, which then locks into position, and you can actually that's how this then the rubber gaskets then tied or fixed and sealed against the wall panel connection. Wall buttress and anchor panel. We have the cast-in anchors, and typically in a wall reservoir, in a reservoir, we'll have 4 buttress panels, especially on your bigger ones, your 30, 20, and 10 megaliters. Wall stressing installation of cables. On this picture, now you can see typically the buttress panel with protruding cables. Yeah, so then coming towards the end, this is the buttress panel with the precast wall panels and just the finishing cap that gets placed after the stressing has been done, just to ensure a nice finished off reservoir wall section. Basically, that's the end of the slides, and I would like them to quickly run through a couple of photos, some of our recent projects. I just want to share that. Here we have typically on one of the sites and some recent photos of our currently active sites. The crane that the installation contractor Corestruck is using to lift the wall panel from the truck into position. And if you recall, I was discussing overlapping trades right in the beginning. Typically here, it's one of our 20 megaliter reservoirs currently under construction. You can see the wall, the floor panels are currently being cast on site while the precast columns, beams, and center core roof slabs are being installed. On the next photo, you can actually see there the background as well. The wall panels are also going up. And here you can see the actual alternate floor slab panels being cast. And that's the beauty of the precast reservoir system with the overlapping trades. As you are constructing, there's actually a lot of components going up in the same time. And if perfectly planned, there's a major saving in construction time. And obviously that relates to construction cost savings. Some just additional photos on that same site. Typically here under the wall, after the floor slabs, you can see the no fines. When we cast these reservoirs, the floor is shaped to drain externally to the perimeter, and no fines follows the same slope. So everything throws to the side and it goes into your subsurface drainage system. Which you don't see here, and it's unfortunate I didn't get a picture now while I was preparing the presentation. We also cast in the cut-off beam section. The cut-off beams below the floor slabs to divide the reservoirs actually in your quadrants for leak detection. And typically here's an external picture of one of the 10 megaliter reservoirs with all of the installations then done. And here's just one of the internal photos. Here you can see the floor slab panels now being already done and the CombiFlex bandage system installed. You can see actually it's a nice clean finish with your CombiFlex bandages. Your precast columns to base connection gets nicely sealed. In the precast columns, we actually have the casting pockets, so the steel connection, it's grouted in, so it has a standard concrete cover, and we do also put on waterproofing over and across the complete pocket system, so to completely seal off the columns from the apologies, to provide sufficient cover for the water retaining system. Then I would just like to quickly share these photos of the water towers. This is the recent water tower we have finished at 2.5 megaliter.
Yeah, we'll see you Sunday.
I'm not going to see you on Sunday. But anyways, coming back to the water tower, as you can see here, the complete water tower system, it's a 2.5 megaliter tank at the top, about 40 meters high, a diameter at the top of about 18 meters, and a 10-meter high wall panel. The whole system was a precast system, apart from the in situ concrete stubs and disc at the bottom. You'll see it was about 950 by 950 square concrete columns going up with a spiral concrete beam and a precast concrete shaft. And then you also have your precast beam elements at the top. And then similar to the reservoirs I've shown you now, the water tank sitting right on top of that slab, 40 meters up. Here's one of our 3.5 megaliter water towers currently being constructed. I think this photo was taken in August, beginning of August, where the construction was underway with the rotations going up. And this is a recent photo actually now when I was on site a bit earlier in the week, where the guys are now currently installing the precast beams at the top, ready to receive the precast floor panel. And then lastly, the tank going on top. That's it from our side, Billy.
All
In
right,
short,
thank
what we
you.
do and some background on our reservoirs.
It's not short and it's not a lack of information. It's just right. Everybody, if you agree it was a good presentation, give a thumbs up or a clapping of hands so you can show your appreciation. There's a few coming through now. All right, Willie, thank you very much. And Quibus, I know your voice is not so good at the moment. But now we come to the opportunity of questions. Does anybody have any questions for you guys? There's Quentin. I was going to go to my chat. See, there was a question from Quentin. Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I noticed no bracing used for the columns and slab system while under construction. Do the columns resist all, I assume that's lateral loads during construction? This is before the walls and the roof become a monolithic structure.
Yes, that's correct. We have no bracing during installation. So we've designed the column to be a cantilever at one stage until the beams and slabs are installed. So no bracing required. It's designed like that.
Next question from Erhard Krier is, what is the typical width and thickness of the wall panels?
Typically, the thickness is 170 and the width ranges from 1.5 to 2 meters.
Right. Any other questions? You can raise your hand or you can type a message. Yes. Somebody as Mark Hovey asked, can you elaborate on the service life of the structure and what do you do to consider this, the service life of the structure?
A concrete test yielded results on the permeability scale that actually went off the charts. So the concrete is extremely durable. We work on average on the 60 MPa strength. So we estimate 100-year life cycle of the structure.
Sure. Okay. We've got still plenty of time for questions. Are there any other questions? If I may ask a question, as a bit of a basic question about creep and shrinkage. How do you incorporate creep and shrinkage in the structure to ensure there's no cracks and problems with leakages?
So the bulk of the shrinkage happens in the factory with the wall panels. And as soon as the infill grout in between the joints are poured into position, we immediately exert 1 MPa pressure, like an initial pre-stress into the wall, to counter any possible further shrinkage in the grout, so that it mitigates any shrinkage. So we immediately put the entire system into compression.
Okay. And then another question before I go back to Neil. When I saw the entry of these reservoirs in the Fulton Awards and saw it was precast, I wondered, but that can't work because it's going to leak. Do you ever have problems with leakages, and what do you do to prevent that or react to leakages?
So we in the grout mix, there is free cement that acts similar to what Penetron would do. So as soon as there's presence of moisture, then that free cement in the mix then hydrates and crystallizes and then effectively seals the crack. So that's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is a 100 millimeter wide cementitious joint that gets painted on the positive side, on the inside, on each and every joint. So we have a double waterproofing system on the joints. We did on past reservoirs, it wasn't a full-on leaks, it was more like a sweating of moisture through that positions. But normally within 3 weeks, it's self-healing, it's self-healing, desiccates and it seals itself.
All right, no, thank you. I'm going to go back to the questions in the chat. How many meters of bandage on a 10 megaliter reservoir?
On floor bandages.
I don't know if Neil could maybe say what he's asking. If there's floor bandages. Right, well, Neil is probably typing. Let's go to the next question. Any seismic considerations? If so, how did you go about this and what codes did you use?
So we've considered the SANS 0160 codes, the same approach as one would do for an in-situ reservoir. We've went for the consideration that the roof is not sealed on top of the wall. So if in that extreme circumstance, the water will certainly slosh, but we will allow it to escape over the wall. It won't be contained with the roof. Yeah, we did the calculations on our joints, considering ground accelerations, and we found it to be in order. Luckily in South Africa, we don't have as extreme circumstances as in New Zealand, for instance, where they physically have like vertical ties to tie the system down to the foundation. And inside the wall panels, they have bracing, they have reinforcing in the shape of bracing inside the panels. But with our system and our conditions, we've checked and we found it to be in order.
All right, thank you. Then back to Neil. He says all bandages or specifically roof bandages.
So on the roof, we don't have bandages. We have the key joints between the slabs, and then on the entire roof then gets covered with a TPO. It's a loose laying waterproofing membrane, almost like a tarpaulin type material that's covered that covers the entire roof, which then effectively waterproofs the roof.
All right, thank you.
Maybe if I can add there, Billy, we have completely removed the standard ballast system that normally gets put onto the in-situ reservoirs, where you have the torch on and then the ballast on top of it for isolation. With the system, the TPO, as Cobus has mentioned, we also have a isolation membrane below the TPO. And from the studies we have done, it gives you the same value as the ballast would have done with the torch on, with the added benefit where the ballast you would have had maybe maintenance and then end up damaging that torch on you have laid there. With the loose lay system on top, you have the same properties and less maintenance.
All right, thank you. Then there's a question on maintenance joints. Do you have to maintain your joints?
No.
All right,
No,
that's an easy
yes.
answer.
Mm.
All right.
I
Next question.
hope that satisfies the question.
Is a joint between the wall panels and the wall footing considered to be a pin joint?
Yes, it's a pin joint in service. But when the post tensioning is applied, it's a sliding system, and then it's pinned afterwards.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I think I did all the ones in the chat. Anybody got anything else I want to ask or add?
We might just discuss that pin condition further. The reason we went for pinned is if we go for the fixed condition, we found with our panel thickness, it's just impossible to withstand that moment at the bottom. That moment is just too enormous. And the sliding joint, we have a complicated waterproofing system which is quite challenging in a sliding system. So hence pin being the most effective for this precast wall.
All right, thank you. All right, my last chance for a question. You can raise your hand or you can just start speaking. Or there's another question coming in. Nitakozo, time cost difference. What percentage difference approximately are we looking at when comparing the traditional in-situ option and this precast option?
Well, all things considered, it will range about to 30% cost and time saving. Well, direct time saving, which equals the cost saving.
Okay. All right, and then there's another question. Sorry, it feels like a oral examination here with questions coming from the panel. But everybody's interested and wants to know more, so I think it's a good thing. At the joint between the wall and the wall footing, how do you cater for the vertical moments in the wall panels due to long-term creep caused by the post-tensioning?
We pre-stress the panels before, well, it's pre-stressed during manufacturing. So it's stressed vertically to ranging between 3 to 5 MPa, vertical pre-stress.
Okay.
Yeah, that encounters the moment caused by the post-tensioning and the creep moment as well. It's
Okay.
designed as a vertical slab, so to speak, a vertical pre-stressed slab.
Okay, thank you. All right. Once again, last chance for a question from the panel. No, I think I want to thank Willie and Kobus. Thank you very much. All right, there's one more question. Let's slip this question in from Neil. Precast concrete, aggregate size and type.
So it's a 13 millimeter quartz in the wall panels. In the slab, it's more smaller aggregate, 9 millimeter in the slabs. Due to the fact that the slab has a very high slump, or very low slump rather. It's a very dry mix.
Okay.
So just maybe an overall discussion, just some food for thought. We would like to get some answers from the floor as well. What we found with the post tensioning is that the theoretical losses, the calculated losses, it doesn't seem to be all present, it doesn't seem to be actual. So it does seem that the calculations are very conservative. We've done a couple of tests where we measured elongation in terms of the stress applied to the strands, and the elongation is exactly what the theory says it should be, considering the Young's modulus and the force applied. So it's as if those losses aren't really there. Well, except for the long-term losses, but the short-term losses, we found that it can almost be omitted during calculations.
You're actually posing a question to the audience, and if there's somebody in the audience that knows enough to be able to comment on that, or is brave enough to comment on that, I would rather say. Okay, while we're waiting for somebody, is the horizontal post tensioning in the wall panels for all reservoir sizes bonded or unbonded?
Unbonded. And 10 megaliter and below, we go for the 15.7 millimeter cable. 10 megaliter and above, it's 18 millimeter cable, unbonded.
Okay. Doesn't look like you're going to get your answer. So I think I'm going to conclude it this time for the second time. Thank you very much, Willie and Kobus. I appreciate your time for presenting this, putting it all together, sharing your knowledge. I think the audience stayed here right to the end, showing that they were really interested in what you're saying and what you guys are doing. So thank you also for the audience for coming, for listening in. If you're not a member of the Concrete Society, consider join our group, join our society, and we're going to make concrete great again, if I can say something like that. And all of that, thank you very much and have a wonderful evening, and see you at the next concrete class. And if I can ask Willie and Kobus just to stay on the line for us, please. So thank you very much.